Hello and welcome back to Right on Time. It is so nice to be back. It feels like it's been forever since we were in the hot seat recording, and you'll notice a couple of differences today. Firstly, there's no Sarah, it's just me today. Um, Sarah is still recovering from having a really bad bout of the flu and has pretty much no voice, which defeats the point much as attending a podcast. So today it's just going to be me, so please bear with me. But fortunately, you're not just going to hear my dulcet tones. We're going to have a special guest today, which we'll talk about in a second. But sending lots of well wishes over to Sarah, and yeah, can't wait to have you back, Chick, when you're feeling better. And also a different setup. So we're not in the studio today, so a bit different. We're doing this remotely, and something that Sarah and I talked about quite a lot when we started off with the podcast was the goal would be to do a bit hybrid in the studio, do it from home, and the vision board 2025 is that we have our own home studio. So this is a start. So yeah, please bear with us a little bit as we navigate this, and we're really excited to get your feedback on it. So once the podcast episode is out, please fire over your thoughts, your feedback. Things we can do better. Always love your feedback. And finally, we have a special guest today. So we hinted at this on our social media over the last couple of days, but I am super excited to be able to introduce somebody who I actually almost feel like is in no need of an introduction. She is an entrepreneur. She is a fitness inspiration. She is an absolute powerhouse and an ultimate girl's girl boss. And if I was to describe this person, she's someone that just supports everyone. She elevates and champions everyone that she's around. And she is the formidable, and of course, the other half of 365 Female. It's Michelle Gallagher.
Oh, thank you so much, Megan. That was some intro.
I was like
Really got
trying to think,
emotional.
I was like, how can I introduce this absolute woman that is a force? And I was like, these are all the things that kind of sprung to mind when I was doing a bit of brain dump. But yeah, welcome to the pod. It is so nice to have you. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I've been really excited for this. As soon as you and Sarah asked me, I was like, yes, definitely. Can't wait to chat. All
I
things
know.
I can talk for Scotland. So
Well, so can we. So that is amazing. We've got lots to talk about today, and I feel like we've been trying to make this happen for a wee while, and just one thing or another. And Storm, was it Storm Ewan? I think that was the name of it.
yep.
Had other plans, but yeah, super excited to chat with you today. And today, I know we're going to be speaking about all things pre and postpartum, body image, fitness, nutrition, and dig deep into some of the, I guess, the myths and taboos surrounding the whole pre and postpartum elements. And I think also talk about some of the contentious areas that I don't think are talked enough about when it comes to people on their, I guess, their body journeys when it comes to either trying to have a baby, to then falling pregnant, to then postpartum after having a baby. So super excited to chat with you, pick your brain because you are the pro. And for those of our listeners that listen to, I think it was episode 3 that we spoke about, in terms of my adjustment and journey when I was pregnant. I obviously approached yourself when I was early doors in my pregnancy because I just found it was a whole minefield around what you can and can't do. I also have talked personally around my struggles with my body changing when I fell pregnant, and then also then going through our own struggles as a family and then navigating that. I found exercising to be such a good outlet, and 365 Female came in and just, you got it, you got me. And I mean, I said in the podcast previously, I think it was the fittest I've ever been,
Yep.
which is ironic. Oh, here's my AirPod falling out. Ironic considering that it's probably when it's most people's least fit stage in their life. But yeah, I guess just starting off for everybody to get to know you a little bit. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and 365 Female?
Yeah, of course. So, like I say, yeah, I'm Michelle, co-owner of 365 Female, with my best friend and business partner, Nicole Garner. And 365 Female, I guess in a nutshell, it's an online women's coaching community. We focus on training, nutrition, and mindset. And really, what we want for women is to be able to eat more so they can train harder. Because then we know that ultimately helps women look better. And we know from so many years' experience, women, they always want to change their body composition, but maybe looked at restriction and over exercising as ways to change their body. So that's our mission, is eat more, train harder, and build a body that serves you every day. So no more restricting. But I got into the fitness industry when I was 16, just out of college, and now what, 33. So I like to think I've kind of done it all, group classes, Les Mills, spin, Zumba days, and then one-to-one personal training, group training. And then I decided to go back and study. So I wasn't very confident in the gym. And I think a lot of people find this hard to believe because of the stuff that I get up to now. But I'd been in the industry probably around, well, let's say 8 to 10 years before I really started maybe training, lifting weights. I always wanted to lift weights, was really nervous, was scared. So anyway, went back to study my level 2 and my level 3 personal training. And then I went on to do, this is when I went to do pre and postnatal, because a woman came into the gym and she was pregnant, and I was in charge of doing her program, and honestly I froze. I was like, what can she do? And I was so scared, and just never left this woman with any confidence to come back. But then I felt really silly as well, and I thought, right, that is it. So then went on to study pre and postnatal. That was maybe around, the years are all a bit blurry, let's say 6 years ago. And that's when I started my business, which was then more commonly known as the Strong Mum Club. But then just recently, last year in October 2023 October, Nicole and I came together to form 365 Female, which is our little baby now. So yeah, it's been one hell of a journey in the fitness industry, but absolutely love it. I've seen all the changes, and now I've really kind of found my place in the industry, I would say. Just recently qualified as a nutritionist, which was like a dream since I've been young. And I don't actually, well, I kind of understand why now, but it took a long time to get there. But yeah, that was like a childhood dream. So that feels really pretty cool.
I love that. And you talk a lot about like you've had various different career milestones. So I knew you're from the Strong Mums because of other mums that I know. Um, and you've joined forces with Nicole. So talk me a little bit around your why. Because I feel like 365 Female, I mean, before 365 Female, you were a powerhouse in yourself. And I guess as a business and as an entity, it was doing really, really well. So what was the concept and I guess the reason for coming together?
We're coming together. That's a great question, because like Nicole and I both had separate successful women coaching businesses. And like say Strong Mum Club, that really felt like say my baby then as well, and I had really built it up from nothing. It actually it got me thinking just when I was thinking back to my journey. So it started during COVID with 5 new mums online. And that was like January 2020 or 21, I can't remember. And I'll always remember those 5 mums so well. They were all around about the same stage postpartum, quite early days, like maybe 16 to maybe 20 weeks. So we done all like online, gentle stretching, gentle movement, core and pelvic floor work, and it was really lovely. And then it grew and grew and grew, and at one point we had 100. I remember having 100 in my Facebook group, and this was at the time we were called the
Wow.
pre and postnatal posse.
Love that.
That
I
was
feel
the
like
first name.
that needs to come out the group chat. I feel like that needs to come back at some point.
I know. I had heard it somewhere. I think there was like a walking club or something in Australia called the Pre and Postnatal Posse. Because that was one thing. See, because I'll touch upon this probably quite a lot throughout the podcast. I think because I wasn't a mum myself, I used to feel like, do I really understand? So I studied inside out, because I was like, I need to know. I listened to podcasts all from all over the world, read as much as I could, because I was like, I need to know about this because I've not been through it. So yeah, I listened to a podcast in Australia, and it was a pre and postnatal posse walking group. Anyway, I thought it was great,
Love that.
but when I used to say it, I would cringe. I was like, I can't say this. I don't know if it was maybe because it wasn't originally mine, who knows? And then Strong Mum Club, it just said what it did on the tin, and it was absolutely fantastic. But then what I found, I was getting to a stage where I was like, do you know, there's so many other women out there that I can help,
Mhm.
that I'm maybe almost too niched down, because it was pre and postnatal. People felt like you had to be very early postpartum. But now, like once you've had a baby, you're postpartum.
Yeah.
But it was very niche. So then I started to realize like there's so many other women out there that I can be helping, which is all part of my mission, like my reason why, which ties into 365 Female, about really helping women become strong and learn to like love fueling their body and becoming like strong, powerful, which was great. And I found for now we can still help the same clientele. I actually still have a client who was Strong Mum Club, um, and we can still help pregnancy, postpartum, but now on a larger scale because we can cater to everyone. But what they have in common is that they want to get stronger. And what I found, and I think this would be, I'm thinking of me, for example, if I'm lucky enough to have a family of my own one day, I would see the gym as a little outlet. Like that would be my time to get away, which I think is really important. As much
Definitely.
as it must be really difficult to find that time. But I thought when we were very niche down, it was like people could bring their baby to class, which was lovely. It was really nice. But now I feel like it's women's time to, they can be a mum, but they can also have their own hobbies. So yeah, and since coming together, it's just totally made sense. I feel like I can now shout about my message from the rooftops, like, let's eat more, let's get stronger, let's build a strong body and lift weights. And yeah, so that's kind of where it came from.
And I think you touch on a really nice point though as well around the fact that you kind of almost see the evolution
Yeah.
with 365 female. So I guess using me as an example, I joined you girls when I was pregnant, very early doors, and actually something that when I was postpartum and Blake was in hospital, I remember you messaging being like, "Hey, as a little sweetener with I guess the journey you're going through, here's a bit of a program to help you when you do get a minute to yourself." And I do think that's the lovely thing about the community is
Hmm.
that being part of like the WhatsApp groups and the morning messages from everybody. And as you say, you've got a blend of lovely, lovely, strong females who've got
Hmm.
different experiences. But what is really lovely is you might be a mum, but you're still you. And there's more to just being a mum in life. And as much as some people might disagree with that, it's a bit of a contentious topic, I guess. But I found for me, I needed to find a bit more of my identity. And the lovely thing about 365 was I felt that I was trying to find that again, which was really, really lovely. So I guess
Definitely.
focusing on, I guess, the whole kind of pre and postpartum journeys, what do you tend to find is the most common reason for mums to be or new mums to get in touch?
To get in touch. So I would say, there has been a shift recently, which is amazing. So I think before, not many women used to exercise during pregnancy. Obviously it was an old wife's tale, or I was actually giggling
Mm-hmm.
when I heard you and Sarah. I think one of you said an old midwife's tale one time.
Yeah,
I
it
was
was Sarah.
laughing. So that's been
So
stuck in
true
my
though.
head. Aye. So yeah, it's an old wives' tale, like don't exercise, you'll harm the baby and things like that. So that's obviously a mum's worry. And again, that's why I was really worried when that woman came into Valentine's that day and I didn't know what exercises to give her. And it really makes me think as well, every personal trainer, gym owner, like online coach should really have this training because majority of your clientele are going to be pre or postpartum. And it's actually really safe. All the exercise is really safe, which we'll go into. But just knowing that, because before I had done the qualification, you're so unsure. But just knowing that it's safe and reassuring, the women is great. So yeah, there's been a big shift in terms of so many more women are exercising during pregnancy, which is brilliant. And I like to think, I'm like, I want to take some credit for that. I used to shout from the rooftops, it's safe to exercise during pregnancy. We had so many women training with us, and they would always tell me as well that they do sometimes still get funny looks in the gym. People look as if, oh my God, what are you doing? Like when they see the bump, but it's completely safe. So women, they still get in touch and kind of say like, can I exercise? What can I do? And when I kind of talk them through it, I usually say, it is quite common sense. So if something's going to get in the way of your bump, you don't do that, but just listen to your body and don't overexert yourself. There's a wee list. I've got a wee list of actually what we can and can't. I think we'll come into that, but I'd say the most common thing when women get in touch, or a lot of the time, this is a common one, and I don't want it to make anyone feel bad when I say this. It's more just to help. A lot of women will maybe get in touch and say, I'm going to start when I've had the baby or when I've had my family. If people are maybe planning 2 or 3 and they almost think, what's the point in starting now? I'm going to start once my body's been through all this. And the
Mhm.
best piece of advice I could give anyone is like start now. If you know you're able and you've no complications and you can exercise, start, because the difference I've seen in women come back after being able to exercise throughout the pregnancy, their body's just healthier, it's stronger, it definitely recovers quicker, and that puts you in a much better position physically and mentally to be able to then deal with mum life and stuff. So that's a big bit of advice is, and the main thing I notice women say is, I'm not starting now, I'm pregnant, sit on the couch, I don't want to do anything. But it's recommended to do like 150 minutes of exercise per week, and that will look different for everyone. So if you were a beginner, you would still be advised to actually start, but that might be 5 30-minute walks a week. Or if you're actually regular exercise, that could be 3 50-minute gym sessions a week. So, it's basically the best advice is start now. And what else? A lot of women will say, like, when can I run? So again, it's kind of a lot of stuff's very individual. And one thing I found with the course and the qualification, it's very textbook. And who's to, especially now, you can't give someone the same advice as a beginner to someone that's like already
Mm-hmm.
training 6 times a week. They'll be very different. But with running, because that's a big question that comes up, when can I run again? Or can I run during pregnancy? So you can run during pregnancy. But when we get this hormone relaxing within our body, preparing for childbirth to make, the hips and things be able to loosen a little bit, but it goes to every joint in the body and we can never tell where it's going to go. So sometimes with running and the impact, that's when women are more likely to get injured. So that's a question that comes up a lot. I want to run. I would maybe say, if you're a regular runner, like you could still get injured, of course, but you're probably going to be more used to it, like used to that impact. So about 3 months. If you've never ran before, I'd definitely be waiting past the 6 month mark to make sure that your joints and things aren't going to be risk of injury.
And you know what? I think you hit a really good point here around the fact that a lot of people come in to say, I don't know what I can and can't do.
Yeah.
And I think also you're right about, and I don't think it's necessarily making anyone feel bad, because I think everybody on their journey does things their own way.
Yep.
And some people approach it quite differently. And I know some people, as you say, will sit and be like, I don't want to do anything while I'm pregnant
Hmm.
for various different reasons. Whether that's because they've had a roller coaster pregnancy in the past, or
Yep.
they've possibly miscarried, and they just want to do everything they can to protect this little gorgeous bambino in their belly. Um, but I think also there's a massive part, and it's a good segue actually. It's a massive part around, a lot of people aren't used to or aren't prepared for, I would say, the adjustment that comes with their body changing when
Hmm.
they become pregnant. And you talk about the hormone and the muscle relaxing and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's one big one, because I'll be honest, I did forget about it a lot.
Hmm.
And it was you who'd remind me and be like, don't overdo this, or, think about this and maybe make adjustments to your exercises, in ways that I wouldn't have thought about, if I'm totally
Yep.
honest. But I think a massive part is like accepting who you are becoming. And
Hmm.
I think body image is a big, big topic that people don't talk enough about when it comes to being pregnant. And also preparing your body. So if you want to have a baby, so a bit like you're saying, you'd love to have a family at some point. Like when you decide, you make that decision, that conscious decision that, right, we want to have a family. A lot of my friends, um, almost go to that point of like, well, what do I need to do to get my body in the best place?
Hmm.
And I think, to your point around continuing to do something throughout your pregnancy and continue to do what you do is really
Yep.
important. I think a lot of people just cut things, they become quite restrictive, whether that
Hmm.
be with foods, or cut back on impactful exercise. Actually, I think that in my experience, by doing that, it doesn't necessarily set you up for success when you do become pregnant and then your body evolves. And
Yep.
I think for me, I know I really struggled with the fact that, having been someone who could exercise quite freely, and I'll be very honest and candid that I've not been someone that had to really battle with their weight,
Hmm.
in the sense that I've always been quite fit. I enjoy exercise. I love getting in the gym and doing something. But then when I became pregnant, I found that really, like, I just found it a real shift. And I think that whole adjustment in body image and how you view yourself and your body changing out with your control is something that I don't think we talk about enough. And I guess, what advice would you give to anyone going through that journey where they've fallen pregnant and their body is changing in more ways than they probably appreciate, and they're not sure about what they can do pre and postpartum.
Yeah. So again, this was something I used to struggle with as well. But again, it was all these beliefs in my head, like I'm not a mum. How can I talk to someone who's had a baby about body image when they might think, what do you know? So again, I was like, right, figured out different ways. And then I realized as well, I thought, because it's totally different, but I have suffered again with like body dysmorphia and seen my body very differently. And I thought, what tools do I use? Again, it's going through a change in your body, and again, women will go through changes in their body with pregnancy, menopause, different things. And I was like putting together, right, I've come up with a little tool book because I know like a lot of women are going to struggle with this. Have some tools in your tool book ready to try and help those women. So the first one, and it's not as easy said than done, but or it's what's that saying? It's easier said than done. But I'll always try and encourage the women, like, right, let's focus on what your body can do. So, like obviously for one, you're growing a baby. But then if you're still able to exercise whilst growing a baby, like that's fantastic. And trying to give the mum like knowledge on how much energy your body's using to grow the baby and to then exercise and things. So they start to really look at diet and exercise in a different way. And that's what I usually say is, right, this is a new journey. So we can't really look back at, a lot of women will say, oh, when I was 18, I was this way or I was this. And I'm like, right, that's a totally different journey now. You're now grown a baby, or if it's the second baby, I'm like, right, you've now got a child looking after and you're growing this new baby. So there's life's different now. So I'll kind of look at saying, right, we'll focus on what the body can do first. That's always a great wee tool to use. Next one is setting expectations. So again, a lot of women have maybe went to an online coach or a personal trainer before when they've wanted to change their body composition. And really then they've only looked at diet in terms of how do I lose body fat. So I'll say, right, if you're worried about your body changing, how about we look at nutrition and exercise and a real health approach? So you're looking after your nutrition to fuel your body and to give your baby the most optimal nutrition possible. So it's kind of taking a different approach just to help their mindset on, because if we've always looked at maybe low calorie diets, for example, for 10 plus years, they're not just going to change overnight with me saying, right, let's focus on, fueling your body and your baby. So it's definitely a process, but then we'll also look at, right, can we look at exercise as a way to support your body through these changes? Because your body goes through like anatomical changes. So actually the anatomy is changing. And obviously your stomach, but then your back, it's putting your center of gravity off completely. So if we can say, right, let's focus on exercising to keep your back nice and strong, keep your glutes strong to support your core and your pelvic floor, and your shoulders to help keep your bump, supported. And hopefully over time the shift starts to kind of change. But then the last kind of little tip will be like, right, that's not as easy as we say. So journal your feelings. So if you do get a day, you'll have a day that you maybe are like, oh, you got to the gym, and then the next day you might look at your body and say, oh my God, what's happening? So journal that, and that just maybe gets the thoughts that are in your head down on paper, and maybe makes you kind of recognize it a wee bit more, and then think, right, why am I feeling like that? And you've maybe had a stressful day, or maybe then your nutrition is not actually been giving you enough energy. So you've been low in energy, you're then feeling a little bit irritable, and it's maybe then going to encourage you, right, I need to eat more because this is why this is happening. So it's a process, but I definitely say that's why having the support and the community and the education there is really, really helpful, because I think it's so difficult. Every woman I speak to is majority of the time, like says, try to change body composition, and now their body composition is changing, and it's all
And you don't
mindset,
get a
isn't it?
say.
Yeah,
Like it's happening, and it's like one of these ones where it's like it's happening. You've just got to roll with the punches. And I
yeah,
think you talk a little bit about, like, you touched and very openly and transparently and bravely, by the way, I want to say, have shared
thanks.
about your journey and body dysmorphia. And I do think that it's a conversation, again, that hasn't got enough of your time at points. And I think a big element around when you do some sort of exercise and you're eating well, you do tend to feel better in yourself.
Hmm.
And I think that's a big thing. And if there's one advice, tip, I guess experience share that I would give out to anybody who is potentially feeling a bit like I did, and I know that so many other mums, even in my antenatal groups, have felt where they're just like, "Who is this? Who am I?" It's being kind to yourself,
Yep.
and I think there's a big piece around be kind to yourself, but also try and learn to look at your body differently. And a
Hmm.
bit like what you talk about, look at yourself as a strong female, right? Rather than seeing yourself as a figure, right? So it's,
Yep.
and a shape. It's like, what does your body do? And I think for me, that was the one thing that I really tried to work on was think about what my body was doing and giving,
Hmm.
and not just to me, but to Blake in my tummy. And one of the things I really struggled to do it initially, and I actually ended up really enjoying doing it, was I took weekly photos.
Yeah.
So and also as part of 365, I feel like I'm plugging 365 a lot today, but it's because it was such a huge part of my prepartum journey.
Yep.
Um, but you would push me to send videos in the gym and photos. And I hated it initially. Like I absolutely, and I've never been that kind of person who you see on social media or TikTok or whatever, and they take videos of themselves in the gym and they just feel like so confident. But actually, it was such a good push because in my head, I was like, it's the only way that I'm going to know and you're going to know if there's progress or if my technique and form needs some tweaking. But actually, in doing that, I was able to look back at photos and videos and just see the transformation. And actually, I
Yep.
think when you visually see that, you can't argue with it. Like
Yep.
your mental kind of like imposter syndrome a little bit, that inside person in your head, you can't argue with that.
Hmm. Definitely. It's like stacking that evidence of if you did have a bad day or if maybe a bad body image day, you're looking and going, wait a minute, I mean, I remember you were like pressing the barbell over your head, you were lunging with the barbell, and it's so empowering. And I think, as you say, it's like, right, focusing on what you can do. So we can't control I mean, it's during pregnancy, I think you're going to put on anywhere from like 9 to 16 kilos, for example. Like we have to. So getting used to those changes, but focusing on right. Well, you're like I can still look after my training and nutrition because it's going to put me in a better place mentally as well. To deal with the everything that motherhood brings. I always remember one of my clients. She made such a good point. She was like, "Do you know, Michelle, it's really hard coming to the gym on little sleep, and challenges." She was like, "But." It makes when motherhood's really difficult, she had 2 young ones. She says it's better when you're feeling better within yourself. It's so much better. You can deal with all the challenges that are coming because you've maybe had a wee hour to yourself and just cleared the mind. And yeah, I loved when she said that. I was like, that's so amazing. She's like, times are hard, but it'd be even harder if I felt like crap. And I'm like, yep.
And I think also there's a massive part around sometimes you can't get to the gym. Like
Yep.
there's it's like it's actually like don't beat yourself up if you can't do it, every day. I mean, by
Uh-huh.
no means was I in the gym every day, but like I think there's a piece around just carve a little bit of time. And I think that kind of comes on to quite nicely the stigmas around what you can and can't do. I know you touched a little
Yeah.
bit of running, and I think for me, I asked you outright. I remember in my voice note, I was like, "Can you just advise me on where I can go in terms
Yeah.
of my gym routine?" Because I had stripped it back pretty much, and I was like, "I'm worried I'm going to overdo something."
Yeah, totally.
So, like, what? Yeah, what is your take on the do's and don'ts while you are, I guess, firstly pregnant, and then
Yep.
also once you've had a baby? I know we've talked a little bit around not doing things too early and being kind to yourself.
Yep.
So what's your take on what you can and can't do in pregnancy, firstly?
Pregnancy. So yep, it's absolutely an amazing journey, and a lot of the time people feel, you feel more tired, don't you, in that first trimester, and it's to do with basically the fetus at the time, little tiny baby, is using your carbohydrate stores to fuel itself and start growing. And after the 12 week, no, 16 mark, sorry, second trimester, that's when the baby has its own stores to then fuel its own energy. So you get basically your own carbohydrate stores back, which is amazing. So during that first trimester, a lot of the time women will be absolutely exhausted and might not get to go to the gym or it might just not even be beneficial. And I think that's something I always say with women as well. I'm like, right, let's set new expectations. So you maybe used to go to the gym like 4 or 5 times a week. You had all the time in the world. Great. Now let's look at like, right, how's your day went? Have you had a good sleep? How's your energy levels? Have you been sick due to, pregnancy and things like that? If so, maybe it's not best going to the gym. So I set new expectations. But then if your energy's feeling fine, or actually you're having a plain sailing pregnancy, what I would say is, so you can absolutely lift weights. It's so beneficial. And then another wee expectation I would think is, say you love training like you and I, and you're like, okay, I want to actually be able to train for as long throughout my pregnancy as I can, because you can actually go right up until, I know another girl as well, she gave birth and she was on the spin bike the same day. So you can go right up till as far as you give birth. So for me as well, one of my goals would be like, I want to train as long as possible to make sure I don't need to take as long a break off, because it's my full life. So that would mean I would be like, right, well, I'm going to need to reduce the weight to make sure maybe I don't pull an injury, because then that would put me out for a couple of weeks, or make sure that I don't overexert myself. So then I'm not exhausted, because the good thing is there's no research or like link between exercise and miscarriage, which obviously a lot of women, and you can understand why people would think that. There's no research there, but the main thing we need to look out for is that the mum would maybe injure themselves or be exhausted. So that's what we're trying to protect. And then obviously, like, we want to make sure we don't do anything that puts us off balance, like risk of fall, and that's obviously the big one. So not doing
Yeah.
anything that would put you off balance, risk of falling, avoiding jumping on boxes or anything like that. But in terms of strength training, keep doing it. It's absolutely great. You can do core exercises as well, which a lot of women, I think you asked that question as well. You were like, I would like to
I
work my
did.
core to support my core, but what can I do?
I actually remember coming to the gym um to see you for the first time
Yeah,
and thinking in my head, right, what are the questions I need to get answered? Like almost having like a rattle in my head.
yeah.
And core was one. Because for
Hmm.
me, I love working my core. I'm a bit of a weirdo. Like I do. And I was like, I don't think I can anymore. So
Yeah.
what can I do? And I remember you saying to me, you can, but you just have to, you basically need to work on it differently.
Yeah.
And I think it was also a really good education point as well, because what I was so used to and associated with code is planks, like doing like,
Sit-ups.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
was doing like literally like ab like crunches. And of course you can't do that when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
But actually, what you did say to me is you can still do those exercises, but you just have to modify them. But also, there's other ways. And you touched a little bit on weights. And
Hmm.
for anybody listening to our podcast, please by no means like consider me and Michelle on the same level of training, just to be really clear, because Michelle is an absolute like, and I say this in the most like feminine, strong way. She's a beast, right? When it
Thank
comes
you.
to training, because you're a powerhouse. And whereas I was someone like I'd like to be in the gym doing spinning, and for me it was like I loved it, but it was never on your scale. But I was terrified of weights, like
Hmm.
absolutely terrified. And I remember saying to you, core, I love, but how can I do it? Can I do it? Can I not? And weights, like I want to get stronger in my upper body, but I don't think I can do that now because I'm pregnant. And you were like, firstly, we're going to talk about core. Secondly, you can do weights, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And I mean, Godfrey laughed. I mean, the number of times he said to me when we were away on holiday was like, "You, it's taken you to be pregnant to actually get in, like the
Yeah, I
gym and
remember
do like
that.
CrossFit type exercise." Like
Yeah.
he was like, What is the catch here?" But you kind of like you just educated around. You
Hmm.
don't have to be going into the gym and bursting yourself.
Yep.
But as you say, core. So like you were like, you can. You just have to look at it differently.
Hmm. So the good thing is, well, you can do core. Actually, you can do all core exercises up until 16 weeks, and that's when the core exercises would change. But I can actually picture, and a lot of the time whenever I've been working with someone pregnant, I kind of try and imagine I've got a bump there to be like, right, how can you move? So I'm not just like springing up and down to the ground. I try and maneuver as if I would have a bump there. But yeah, after 16 weeks we would just change anything. So anything from lying on your back, you would go to on your front. So maybe like hands and knees, for example. But then obviously a lot of things, people get sore wrists and things like that, carpal tunnel. So there's different options for everyone, but you can do core, and it's good to do core. You can obviously work your core lifting weights, so that's always good. And the one wee thing you look out for is if your core muscles were ever to go into, like, I call it a Toblerone shape, like a wee dome down the middle. And that's your linea alba, they call it. If that, obviously at 35 or 38 weeks, can't remember, but it happens to everyone. You get diastasis recti when the ab separation obviously separates to make room for the baby. But if you get a dome in shape and it's down that line, it's basically just a sign that you're overexerting yourself and the core muscles are stretching, because when we lift anything, that's your core working. So that's just as I don't want to say it's not too harmful. Like, if it happens, all you do is pull it back and then think, right, that was too much. It's not like if it happens, you're going to injure yourself straight away. But so yes, you can lift weights, just maybe reduce, or some women keep the same throughout, but we wouldn't be looking to like PB or anything like that. In terms of core, what you can do, planks are good, but you can go on your knees, you can do side plank, and then I do some standing exercises with like the band and stuff like that, and they're so deceiving, but they're so great. And then working your glutes and things are really beneficial, because so basically you could have 6 weeks without exercising before your muscles start to basically lose their strength and lose their size. A lot of the time people won't go for a week to the gym and think, oh my God, I've lost all my strength. But 6 weeks before they start to go down. So, I would never say to anyone, like, just take a 6 week break and come back. People can, but it's good to think to yourself, right, I'm building strength throughout my pregnancy to be able to train for as long as I can throughout, to then take as short a break as I need and as I want to. So you're in a really good position. I've seen many women as well now come back after training throughout pregnancy, and they're in a completely different position to maybe if they had I've seen someone, for example, hadn't trained during pregnancy with baby number one, came back and then trained all the way throughout early postpartum, baby number two, came back, and it was like, oh my goodness, I was actually keeping like, right, well, let's take it really slow. And then I was like, she actually doesn't need to. She's in a completely different body to someone who's never exercised during pregnancy. So the change is unbelievable. I actually feel like a lot of the research needs to be updated, because, as I said at the start there, it's very textbook, and who is the textbook woman? Everyone's so
I
different now.
know,
So
and everybody is, and also what people, I guess, where people start
yep.
is all different. And I
Uh-huh.
think when you kind of look at a textbook, people then think, well, if I haven't exercised at all, very much up until, you decide, okay, I do want to start exercising, and then you're
Yep.
pregnant, people are like, well, where do I begin? But
Yep.
I think the weight piece as an example is a good one, because I hadn't really been someone who was lifting weights and I
Hmm.
certainly wasn't doing barbells or anything like
Yep.
that at all. Um, but you just got to start from the basic bottom, and just give yourself the kindness and the grace that you'll just work
Yep.
up to where you can. Um,
Definitely.
and I think finding your rhythm, finding the thing that you enjoy. And I think for me, you and Nicole were awesome at tailoring a plan that kind of comprised all the things I love. So I love to
Yay.
spin. I really like to kind of I was walking Nelly all the time. So you were like,
Yep.
right, let's keep the cardio up and let's build the strength in other ways. And I think that's a great thing about, there's no point start. I mean, you can give yourself a challenge that is going to really push you beyond your limits, but it's probably not the time to do it when you're pregnant,
Yep.
and
That's
also
it.
maybe not so much the time to do it when you're postpartum either. But I
Hmm.
do think, like, if you set yourself a bit of a kind of, and I sit down and think, right, what do I enjoy doing, and what do I think is achievable, then that's the
Yep.
best place to start. And I
Uh-huh.
think you touch a little bit on like postpartum. So when you, I guess, can we set the record straight?
Yes.
What can and can't, when can you start, and then what
Yep.
can and can't you do?
Right. Perfect. So yeah, postpartum is also an area where we need to be very caring to our body and take our time. And it's an area where people want to do the exact opposite. So people are more likely to obviously take care during pregnancy, and you can understand why. And then people just assume that they've had the baby and they can just go back to doing everything straight away. It's the biggest life change your body's like ever going to go through. So postpartum wise, I would say, I mean, they say 6 to 8 weeks if it's been a vaginal birth, and 8 to 12 weeks if you've had a C-section. That's not a lot of time. Like 6 weeks is nothing. So again, everyone's very individual, but I would, before working with anyone, that's like would be my minimum requirement, even if they felt fine. I would just say, sorry, not right now. I also have the Heal Now, Lift Later program. So I designed this thinking this is for women who want to get back to maybe CrossFit, running long distances, lifting heavy, but they've got to heal first before they go into that lifting. And again, I was thinking of me, for example. I thought I would go through this and do it really properly, because a lot of the time women will feel fine and go back in lifting weights again. And again, they put so much pressure on themselves. They think, oh, before I had a baby, I was deadlifting this. I'm like, right, okay, but you've had a baby and your body's went through so many changes. So yeah, 6 to 8 weeks for vaginal birth, 8 to 12 weeks C-section, and then I would do about 6 weeks of healing, which is I've got a wee program and we call it Join the Dots. So that's pretty much about joining your insides back together again, pelvic floor, deep belly breathing, because it's all about muscle and mind connection. They're not like, because we always say when you do your pelvic floor, you shouldn't actually see anything moving. So it's all happening on the inside. So that's one of my favorite programs for people to follow. And then obviously gradually getting back into it. So you can absolutely obviously go back lifting weights, but start light, because like I said, the minute you lift anything heavy, what happens is it puts pressure on your core, which pushes down on the pelvic floor. And if you're not healed right yet, or if it's not had time, that's when people end up with issues later on in life, which can be probably quite hard to fix, but they can be reversed. But again, it's going to take like proper like rehab exercises, which nobody ever wants to do. People just want
And
to
you
do the
don't,
hard stuff.
no, and you don't, when you've already done some damage down there,
Yeah.
the last thing you want to do is then do something else that's going to make matters worse.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's a really nice kind of lead in to the bouncing back,
Yeah.
which I think is the mostly, oh, like for me, it's the topic that is the most contentious of
Yeah.
all. And it's probably something that I have found to be one of the most frustrating as well,
Yeah.
because this whole bouncing back concept, we see it everywhere. We see it on social media. I think particularly Instagram is really bad for it. You see people sharing, I mean, they're sharing what they want to share fundamentally, but what you see it sometimes is that, within 8 to 10 weeks, they're back to what they were pre-pregnancy. And I am not going to lie, there was an element when I remember when I had just had Blake, and I was obviously still like I'd had polyhydramnios. I was bigger than I definitely have it had ever been, and I remember like Googling, being like, "Do people get surgery?" Like
Yeah.
postpartum, thinking like, are these really like bouncing back
Yeah.
girls just like after they've had a baby getting a nip and tuck? Like, how on earth is this happening? But I feel like there's so much stigma, so much pressure to bounce back, and in
Mm-hmm.
actual fact, not everybody's journey is linear, and not everybody can bounce back. And I think that's
Yep.
a one thing for me that I wish I just had somebody to just be almost like I don't know, like a person on my shoulder at the time to say, Meg, you don't need to bounce back, because also you're not the person you were before. You
Yep.
have just had a baby. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, like your body's just gone through a huge amount of change. Like you've got to acknowledge that. So the whole bounce back piece, can you truly ever bounce back to what you once were?
When you asked me this question, I was like, I can't wait to go to town on this. It's the most toxic message ever.
Right?
I'm going to say
Awful.
awful. Yep. I'm going to say no, and you don't want to. Again, easier said than done when I've not had a baby, but it's the now actually knowing what I know and how like different I treat my body now compared to what I used to. I cannot believe the health complications and like things, negative things that we can do to our body through diet and trying to be a certain way, and bouncing back ties into that. So, like say you've taken 9 months to grow this human and we've put on maybe 9 to 16 kilos. That's like what you kind of need to put on. People obviously put on more, some people will put on less. But and obviously some of that, is your baby and placenta and blood and amniotic fluid and things like that. But we've put on fat stores as well to make sure that we've got enough for the baby. And if that was anyone else, say someone hadn't had a baby, but they've put on, for example, 10 kilos of body fat, I wouldn't want anyone to be, say dropping that in like 3 months' time, because they would have low energy, they'd feel crap, they'd be irritable, moody, and their health would be at risk because they'd have been in such a large deficit to
Mhm.
get there. So I'm like, so if women are doing that whilst they're a new mum, it's
Yeah.
really, it's not a great place to be. But obviously women are doing it, and there's pressure. There's so much pressure from people, like, again, it's pressure we're putting on ourselves, but it is a what am I trying to say there? So, society thing.
Got
um,
you.
yes, and it's a shame because women are trying to bounce back, and I get that they may be feeling comfortable in their body, but people just maybe drop weight really quickly, and yeah, it's their energy, their health, all these things are actually at risk. But because humans are pretty much superhuman, and they manage to keep pushing through, but they're pretty much in survival mode, which I know a lot of you new mums are in survival mode anyway because of
Mhm.
sleep. So
Yeah.
that's like double whammy.
It's almost putting yourself through undue stress when
Yep.
you're already in fight or flight mode.
Absolutely. And then to actually
Definitely.
recover. So, when people talk about like eating protein to recover your muscles and things like that, but it's actually recovering your body. Like your body's been through a huge change or surgery if it's been C-section, and we need nutrients and things there to actually recover the body, and for optimal health. So it's really a crucial time where women need more help and support with that. I also actually thought about this as well. A lot of women will drop weight really quickly for many different reasons. And a lot of people will say to them, "Oh, you've bounced back." And I mean, they're saying it harmlessly, but we don't actually know what that mum's going through as well.
Hmm.
And they could be really, really struggling with different things, and they've dropped weight quickly, which again, that their health could be taking a hit. So we really, to everyone, we all need to be careful with this message. It's not great.
And I think it's a language as well. Like as you say,
Yeah.
like what language are we using? Like, oh, you bounce back. Well, then that almost infers that they were overweight to begin with, or
Yes.
that they had something to lose. And I think it's something society in itself. I think as females, we have to do better at reminding other females, our friends. I know, like for me, a lot of my friends who've had babies in the last year, and then also my antenatal groups, and even listeners on the podcast have said that bouncing back, this concept, is something that people tend to think about strangely
Mhm.
before they've had their baby, which is,
Wow.
I think, also the wrong thing because we shouldn't be having to think about that before we've even gone through the journey. And I think if we're around a bunch of really good, strong females, and you know what, not even just females, if you've got the right support crew, I always say find your people that lift you up, that elevate you, and remind you that what you're doing is your best, and
Yep.
actually you don't have to you don't have to bounce back straight away.
Mhm.
Like you will get there. Arguably, everyone does it at their own pace,
Yep.
but you don't. Not everybody looks. I actually saw something on Instagram the other day, and it was a mum she's an influencer, and she was showing the different camera angles. Like I know Chessie King. I don't know if you follow her at all. I think she's great at being very real about certain angles you can sit at, and you look a lot better potentially in
Right.
terms of you don't show your rolls or whatever. Or
Yeah.
and she was like, "This is how I might look in this picture," and then she showed you another picture, and I look completely different, and it was just the reality.
Yep.
And I was like, more people need to realize that what you see isn't always the truth.
Yep.
And I think if there was more of that around in terms of messaging, that makes such a difference. And I think that also leads quite nicely around like mums putting pressure on themselves to lose that baby weight. Like what what tips would you say to someone trying to lose that weight? Because I
Mhm.
think this is a good point around you touched on it earlier around seeing almost nutrition and fueling your body versus calorie counting, which I will be very candid about. And if Sarah was here, Sarah would also voice this. We actually had a conversation months ago where we both said if we were to look back at our early 20s, we were definitely calorie counter girls. Like,
Mhm.
full disclosure, that was how we worked. And we saw food as a means to an end of,
Yep.
or exercise to eat. But actually, it's not about that. And I think that it's really important changing that lens, especially if you're trying to lose that baby weight that people talk about.
Yeah. So my top tip number one would be is throw away the scales. Again, this is just years and years of media that women believe they need to weigh a certain amount, for to be successful, to be happy, to look a certain way. And the weight on the scale, honestly, it means nothing, especially after having a baby. Even like obviously it's in the early days, it's completely unreliable because there's just so much hormones going throughout your body, more blood, more fluid. So it really unreliable. But even after that, maybe say 6 months down the line or something, and things are starting to feel a wee bit, like, right, the pregnancy hormones and all that are gone. But your body's still going to look completely different to what it did. Say you knew you were X amount of weight at this age, or even before baby. Even if you got back to that weight, your body's going to look so different. So that number one tip I would say is, right, let's move the scales away and let's find other measurements of progress. For example, like strength gains in the gym. Like, have you gone from doing a kettlebell squat to now a barbell squat? Like, that's a huge measurement of progress and a boost in confidence that's never going to get swiped away by, a number on the scale going up and down. I've got a great video actually explaining weight fluctuations. If any of your listeners want it, just send me a message. It just explains how, your weight will go up and down like 3-4 kilos, 3-4 pounds a day. Just salt, the carbohydrates in the body, which we need, menstrual cycle, hormones, sleep, all that stuff. So yes, weight's really unreliable. But what I would say is, what else I was going to say there? Oh yeah, so it's like if you do want to change your body composition after having a baby, that's totally okay to do. So you want to feel your best, feel healthy and fit and strong and stuff. So you could look at new measurements, progress measurements of strength, or like we're saying, doing body composition pictures, because this will show you how your body shape's changing, not just the weight on the scale. So you could have two people the exact same weight, but totally different body composition. Yeah, does that make sense?
No, it definitely does. And I think you're right. Get rid of the scales.
Yeah.
I definitely need to practice what I preach. But
Yes.
I think it's a really good piece of advice. And I think especially if you've got them in the bathroom, they're there. So
Hmm.
just yeah, out of sight, out of mind. And I guess just lastly, just on the topic of bouncing back.
Yeah.
So a question that we had from listeners was around those who've had a C-section,
Yeah.
and particularly I guess the consequences sometimes of having a C-section is that many women end up having the C-section pouch, as
Yeah.
we could, I guess, describe it, um, and struggling to shift that.
Hmm.
So, have you got any, I guess, tips around where you've worked with other women and clients that have had that same challenge and you've seen work well?
Yeah. So, a lot of the time, the obviously with the muscle's been cut, and I mean, it's not been cut neatly, has it? It's more like, right, let's get this baby out here. So the tissue, you're going to be left with the tissue, and the scarred tissue. But what women tend to do again is the low calorie diets. It's all women have been taught. They'll maybe just lose weight and they'll just cut their calories and maybe not look at exercise as well. So they might lose weight, but what tends to happen is the actual skin's very still quite loose. So what I would recommend is a combination of obviously our diet. So we can go into a calorie deficit, which means you'll drop body fat, but a sustainable amount to help you train in the gym. And if we're building strength, your body will be becoming tighter. And whether it's, the skin's tightening around about the back, the glutes, the stomach. So the pouch will appear smaller and tighter, but also that you obviously will still be left with the bit that's just actually tissue, but definitely can appear tighter from lifting weights.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to definitely make sure that that is on a reel because I think that's
Yeah,
definitely a hot topic. I know
definitely.
certainly a lot of girls who have said, it's one of these things that I think over time that they want to work on, but
Yeah.
it's just knowing how can you target, because targeting is actually really quite hard when it comes to muscle definition.
Oh yeah, totally. So it's about doing full body, do full body strength and giving yourself time, because if we give ourselves this kind of, right, by this time I want to be looking like this. So we'll always encourage people to focus on process goals. So the outcome goal, you might, an outcome goal could be like, right, I want to drop some body fat. I want to drop a dress size or something like that. But when life's busy and mum life throws you curveballs and it's hard, if we're only focusing on the outcome, it's just too easily dropped, and it leaves you maybe feeling a little bit rubbish. But if we focus on process goals, like for example, right, if I can get to the gym once a week at the moment, that's a process that you're following. Or if I can start prioritizing, like I want to eat more at mealtime, so I'm not maybe just, grabbing snacks like leftovers as I go, because I know that's very common, and trying to make that process happen, you actually get to the outcome, but without it being your only focus. And that helps us like celebrating the wins, daily wins. And just going back to what was touched upon at the very beginning, I think journaling is the best thing for everyone to do, but especially I think during motherhood, because you'll just recognize so much more writing it down without having to even tell anyone, and then you can put your real thoughts and feelings down, which is great.
And then you actually look back and you think, oh my God, I was
Mhm.
in like the trenches, or
Yeah.
did I really think that? Yeah, I know my best friend actually sent me a snippet of her journal the other day, and she
Oh,
was
nice.
like, a year ago, it was her who actually reminded me that it was a year ago that we found out Blake we're having a boy. And she was like, did
Oh,
you know this? And I was like, no. And she's like, I was just going through my journal. So yeah,
wow.
journal all the way. So before we wrap up, I guess I just want to quickly touch on, I guess, 365 female. We talked a lot about it throughout, but if anybody was listening to this podcast and they think, you know what, I really want to work with Michelle and Nicole, or even just have a conversation with you about how you guys can support and help anyone on their body journey, um, how can they get in touch?
Definitely. So Nicole and I actually thought, what can we do if you girls invited me onto this podcast? So we'd love any of your listeners listening, if anything's rang true to them today, or they've maybe thought, wow, I've never even thought about it like that. Send us a wee message with the words right on time. And Nicole and I we're offering a free value call, so we can chat about your goals and what it could look like, either working with us, but even if it's not for them, still walk away with lots of great information on how they can get started to start feeling better. We've got loads of content in terms of how to work out how much calories you actually need, whether you're breastfeeding or you're at a stage where your body's recovered and you're like, right, I actually want to start losing body fat. How do I do that? So we've got loads of information that we could get people started on their first journey.
Amazing. Well, you heard it here first, guys. Get in touch. We'll obviously share on our socials, the Right on Time Instagram, everything about 365 Females, how you can get in touch with Michelle and Nicole, and give a wee direct link to their Instagram. But Michelle, it has been an absolute pleasure. And just before we finish up, we always finish the podcast, Sarah and I, on our guilty pleasure. And also today, I thought because you're here and after the incredible run that you did yesterday, so for those that follow Michelle on our socials, you will know that she's doing a phenomenal, phenomenal fitness event this year, her and Nicole, and she ran 32 kilometres yesterday, which is a beast of a run. So starting off with, what are you proud of? I feel like that's one of them, but is there anything else that jumps out that you're really proud of this week?
This week, that's the big one. Yep, the 32K, and it's funny. It feels like normal now. I can't believe it. That's obviously the first time I've done 32, but it's been a build up. We have a coach yourself, so we get like coaching for this, because if not, you just burn yourself out. You would, even
Oh,
though
you
I'm
would.
experienced enough, not in these kind of distances. So very proud of that. And what else? Even doing this podcast, because this is new,
Love
like
that.
we've got podcasts, but we've took a break. We want to make it better. So yeah, it's been an awesome week.
I love that.
On an my guilty pleasure.
Oh, tell us.
I'm cocktail margarita. I'm obsessed.
Ooh. No, no, you're gonna get me like all hot and spicy, thinking,
I
"Oh,
know.
I could have a cocktail right now."
I,
What time is it? I'm like, "Oh,
I
it's 10
know.
to 12. It's 12 o'clock somewhere in the world."
Totally. We are actually, because of the challenge being so big, we have just decided it's almost just easier for us to say, do you know what? We're not drinking till after that, which is, it just makes it easier, because there's no time for injuries or setbacks at all right now, because it's pretty big. But yeah, if anybody wants to check out our challenge, it's on our Instagram, and it's called the Heavy Long Way Home. And we're donating raising awareness for eating disorder charity called Beat, and breast cancer awareness. So it's pretty big.
It is pretty huge. And if you fancy setting yourself a challenge, you can join the girls for their last 10 and 5K, I think.
Yep.
And there's posters around different like Tesco's, you name it. So yeah, so keep your eyes peeled. I think in terms of what am I proud of this week? Oh, what am I proud of? Oof. you know what? This is such it's not necessarily this week, it's more so a couple of weeks ago. We went skiing. So, our first break away, Paul and I doing a ski break and actually managing to ski for a week on full days pretty much. That for me, I guess, in the topic of fitness, that was something I was not anticipating I could do. Um, but I'm really proud that I did it. My pelvic floor definitely was not thanking me when we were at the top
Yeah.
of the mountain, but um, it's all a journey, and I'm still getting over having Blake 9 months later. But yeah, that's what I'm proud of. And I think guilty pleasure. So Paul and I have actually, I guess, a recommendation. We've recently got into listening and watching um, Landman. It's on
All
Paramount
right.
Plus. It's a really, really good uh, TV series, and I would definitely recommend it if anyone's looking for a
Nice.
guilty pleasure to sit and listen to. And it wouldn't be a normal wrap up if I didn't share some of our mum's guilty pleasures. So
Yes.
this week we got some really good ones. So someone has said something she's proud of actually rather than a guilty pleasure was her baby boy had his first date in nursery and she didn't cry. And I was like, actually, that is
Oh,
something, that's a big
that's good.
win.
Yep.
One of my friends actually shared this. She went, thinking I have no childcare to calling in to work saying I'm sick because I thought that my mum was going to have to look after me. But in actual fact, my mum ended up coming to look after my little boy, and I then had a full day to myself to relax and get over this illness that has taken us all down for the last week, but basically have a childcare free day.
Oh, good on you.
I was like, that's prioritization. Love that.
Definitely.
Um, Someone said, first week at work after maternity, and I haven't cried, blasting the Wicked soundtrack all the way in my day. Love that. Someone has
Nice.
said, went to Starbucks and sat for an hour having a yap for a coffee, when in actual fact, I told my husband that I was just on a walk with a friend.
Love it.
And then someone has said, a secret stock, sorry, put my teeth back in, a secret chocolate stash in the car and opting for the drive home to enjoy the chocolate.
Quite right.
I mean, I don't know if that feeds into our nutrition and fueling your body, but whatever you need to fuel yourself, sleep deprivation when you're a mum is definitely one of them.
Yep.
Love that. When someone's actually said, I like this one before we finish. So it's a proud of moment. My little boy, Kaelin, made it through the night for the first time, 7 till 7, 10 sleepless months, and we've finally made it. Now that I'm not going to say that's
Wow.
also, I feel that's a proud moment, but also a guilty pleasure. I wish I could do that with Blake.
Yep.
Someone give me all the tips. But
Oh
anyway,
man.
it has been a total pleasure, and thank you so so much. Um, Honestly, it has made my Friday. It's been the best start to the
Good.
weekend.
Oh,
And yeah, we will wrap up the podcast just by saying thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. It's been really great fun to chat about all things body image, pre postpartum fitness. And as always, thank you so much to our listeners for joining us today, for sticking with us. And next episode, we'll also have Sarah. So yeah, catch up with everyone soon and have a lovely weekend.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.